Chris, Jill, Leon are the three most important characters of the Resident Evil franchise. Therefore, I've dubbed them the legacy characters. They're basically the equivalent of what you would call DC's Trinity of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So, obviously with Resident Evil 9 around the corner, whenever they decide to reveal it and release it, a lot of people are curious of what they're going to do with the futures of these three very seemingly important characters. And it seems like a shoo-in that obviously they have to be used really heavy for the future of Resident Evil. But what if I told you something more sinister awaits? And that the reality is, we might not need these legacy characters anymore. You'd call me maybe crazy, and that might just trigger you. But unfortunately, it might be more true than you even realize yourself. What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil content for you. And over the last few days, I had a really interesting thought that popped in my head with everyone having discourse about Resident Evil 9, when it's going to be revealed, what's going to happen in it, who's going to be in it. I mean, at this day, I still remind people that we still do not have anything confirmed. Everything else is just random information, and we're just basically trusting a bunch of people to be right about random information that we have no confirmation about. Yes, some people have heard playtesting and other leaks, rumors, but forget all that for a second. I wanted to talk about the three most important characters, the legacy characters of Leon, Jill, and Chris, and the reality that's maybe more harsher than we even realize ourselves. So for Resident Evil 9, we assume, and the key word in all that is assume, we assume that they're going to be used, or at the very least one of them is going to be used for Resident Evil 9. And why wouldn't we? With the way that Village ended, it makes a lot of sense. You know, trying to tie up the loose ends of how that game ended. From a popularity standpoint, it makes a lot of sense as well. As I've always said before, Leon is the fans' golden boy, Chris is Capcom's golden boy, and Jill is somewhere in the middle. So it makes perfect sense from that standpoint. And then, you know, you obviously have the financial standpoint. Those characters, for the most part, usually do a pretty damn good job selling. I mean, Chris, I think, still is holding on, but eventually is going to be surpassed. Resident Evil 5 is still overall the most sold title if you count all the ports, but Resident Evil 2 Remake is hot on its heels. I think it's already beating it on a single platform. So, you know, you have those. Obviously, I just mentioned Resident Evil 2 Remake, which was heavy with Leon, and Resident Evil 4 Remake has done extremely well. And, you know, Jill, people have been waiting to see brought back in a new major Resident Evil game and asked for a long time. And even though Resident Evil 3 Remake still gets a bad rap to this day, people forget the fact that, hey, it still sold a decent amount. So imagine if they went full throttle with that, how much more it would have sold. So it just goes to show you these characters, yeah, they definitely got people's attentions and they definitely do sell. But there's also a reality that we have to realize. And this is where I say the part that might be triggering. We might not need these legacy characters anymore. And what I mean by anymore is not that they might show up and pop up in a game similar to like a small cameo or just a side role, but we might not need them to be the main characters in our future Resident Evil games anymore. Now you may be wondering, well, how could I say a thing like that? Why would I say a thing like that? Well, it's just this. I just gave you reasons why they should do them as main characters in future Resident Evil games, but here's the reality. Resident Evil games have already proven you don't need legacy characters to be extremely successful. And we assume, oh, well, they have to do it. They don't have to do anything. I mean, people seem to sleep and forget the fact that, yeah, Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 2 Remake are the two most sold Resident Evil games. But what's right behind them at number 3? Yep, you guessed it, Resident Evil 7. The game that a lot of people really got back into the franchise after Resident Evil 6. You know, at that point in time, a lot of people were not really high on the Resident Evil franchise, and Resident Evil 7 is the one that forever got a lot of new players as well as existing people back in the franchise. And it's actually, personally, one of my favorite Resident Evil titles of all time. But that game had no legacy characters. Yeah, if you want to count Chris in the end credits, but let's just be honest, if he didn't show up in the end credits, it doesn't really change anything. A lot of people don't even count that person as Chris. They count him as some fake wannabe because they hate the character model. But the point still stands, that game, a lot of people are even questioning, does it really belong in the Resident Evil universe? Because it had so many loosely based things. It just seemed like a really self-contained random story, which is not a problem to me personally, as long as you can tell and have a thrilling experience. And that was the thing I loved the most about Resident Evil 7, is the experience and the immersion with the Baker Mansion and Manor. I can only imagine if they ever do that level of immersion in the original mansion from Resident Evil 1. But my point still stands, that game was extremely successful. It's the third most sold Resident Evil title of all time. And as I said, it didn't have anyone. It had a brand new character, one we had never seen before. It didn't really have anything outside of a few mentions from the Resident Evil universe. And that's one of the most successful Resident Evil titles of all time. But and I was just thinking, oh, well, you know, once in a while you have one that bucks the trend. Okay, but it still stands the reason that that game is more successful than a big portion of the rest of the Resident Evil franchise. And then you look at Resident Evil Village, which did have a little bit more Chris in it, but ultimately Chris was in a really side role. He wasn't in a major role. It was, once again, Ethan's story. And they, once again, were trying to give more stuff to newer characters, other the villains and the whole lords of the area. But the point still stands, it wasn't heavily led by Chris. Yeah, he had importance to it, but he wasn't the main character, is the point I'm trying to make here. He wasn't the main guy you were controlling, the main lead. And that gets me to my whole point, is that do we really need the legacy characters in major roles? Could they be support characters? Could they pop in? Maybe they're on the radio? Yes, but these last two new, not remake, Resident Evil games prove that these games, Village is extremely successful as well. It's over 10 million units sold. But it just proves the point that, yes, you don't just need the legacy characters to sell. I think the illusion people make is, oh, you know, Leon sells and Chris sells and Jill sells. Yes, they sell, but, you know, I guess by that letter law, so did Ethan. And he was just a random, you know, normal guy. And it gets to the point that, you know, there's a lot of people sitting out there saying, you know, hey, the legacy characters, they kind of kill the vibe of the horror because they have so much experience. Now, personally for me, I just want to point this out. I'm not one of those people because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how experienced the characters are on the screen. If something truly horrifies you, it's going to horrify you, the player, a lot more than the person in the game. And if you didn't expect something that's caught you off guard, it doesn't matter how experienced the person in the game is. You know, you're going to be asking for another pair of Pampers real soon. Granted, as I said, that's just my personal take on that one. But I'm just one person. A lot of people point out, hey, you know, I like to be in the shoes of a newer person who doesn't have that experience. Or is it some trained agent or, you know, soldier in some organization? Maybe just some random guy similar to what Ethan was. That brings the horror more so I can experience it and enjoy that experience a lot more. And I can definitely understand where that's coming from, which goes more to the whole points of, do we really need the legacy characters in a major role? I also believe that, hey, you know, anything can be horror or terror, but no matter who's the main character, but you just got to set it up that way. And if you do have more experienced people, then you got to raise the stakes and challenge. But then that gets to the whole argument that people have, the one that we'll probably never have a correct answer with is it too much horror or is it too much action? Is there a perfect blend? Is that impossible? Is it possible? They want it more horror-based or more action-based, and that's a question I don't know if we'll ever have a 100% answer to, because then you get in the whole means of, is it fun? Is it more horror or is it more fun? And that's a hard slope to really 100% answer. But let's get back to my main question I asked at the beginning of this video. Do we really need the legacy characters? And the reality is this. We really don't need them as much as people go on about that we do. Yes, I get it. And I'm this way too. I do have a little affinity for fan favorite characters. You know, I would love to see Jill make a big return in a impactful way. I like to see how Leon looks in future models and stuff like that. I like to see what Chris is up. And then hell, I even go to some of the other characters who aren't as big as them, you know, the Claires, and then my personal favorite, Ada. I like to see what they all are up to. But the reality is they don't have to be the main characters of any of these titles. They can have a presence. Hell, they can even maybe be some unlockable for a mini mode game or something like that. But the reality is that they don't have to be the main characters or even have playable sections. Because Resident Evil has proven to sell without these characters being the main characters. And they've done it for back-to-back brand new titles. And they've been extremely successful. And that's the reality of it. And Resident Evil made this take the route of, hey, you know what? Let's just keep making brand new characters and see what happens. Now, obviously, with all the whole leaks and gameplay test data they've been talking about, it seems to go against that, and that may be the case too. But I also remind people we still don't have 100% confirmation, and maybe they want to give them one last hurrah before they go out. But ultimately, it still wouldn't be the craziest thing if they decide to, hey, put them all on the sideline forever because of that experience, or just because they want to have that brand new experience of a brand new character. And I can definitely understand where they're coming from that. Yes, we do have, you know, favoritism to our favorite characters, and we want to see them. And me personally, if they are going to push them to the side, I'd like to see them have one more grand adventure, regardless if it's with each other or separate from each other. But it wouldn't be as crazy as people make it sound to be. So, if by any crazy stretch of the imagination, Resident Evil 9, the main character is a completely brand new person, and you know, the main characters are just side roles or maybe not even in it at all. I just want people to understand it wouldn't be as crazy and insane as you think. And ultimately, I don't think it would honestly hurt the sales as much as people claim it would. And with the sales of Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village, there's two big games back-to-back proof of that. Those games created a brand new audience that isn't used to the legacy characters as much as us, the OGs, are, and they just proven, hey, a lot of people are in the market for that. And as long as the games are fun and entertaining, they're going to go in there and buy them up. And that's the reality of the situation and the reality I wanted to bring to you. For me personally, yes, for Resident Evil 9, I want them to tie up the whole BSAA going rogue storyline. So I'm kind of siding more towards a Jill and a Chris, if not both of them. I'm not really on the Leon bandwagon, even though I've heard him 24/7 being RE9, but we'll see how it is. But I also just want to prepare people for the fact that, hey, it might not be that way at all. But at the end of the day, as I always like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. Do you think what I just said is absolutely ludicrous of, oh, the legacy characters might not be needed anymore in terms of a major role? Maybe they're side characters or maybe not in the game at all, but for them going forward, just for the fact that we've already had two major Resident Evil titles, back-to-back new ones in Resident Evil 7 and Village, not the remakes, and they sold extremely well. You know, one of them being in a top 3 selling Resident Evil game of all time, and they didn't suffer. They weren't doing bad, but let me know down below what you think, and ultimately, if you did have to do Resident Evil 9, how would you do it? Like, who would you have starring it? Would you have just one character, multiple characters? Or would you do brand new characters? Or would you maybe have a existing character as well as a brand new character just to maybe try to have people warm up to him in the end, as long as with a familiar face? But let me know down in the comment section down below. But thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back in the next one. Thanks, and I'll see you all later. Peace.